The following episode of the Comics and Crypto podcast is for informational purposes only, and anything expressed by the hosts or their guests is solely their opinion. This podcast does not constitute financial advice, and anyone wishing to invest should seek their own independent financial or professional help. Have fun and enjoy the show.
Hi, I'm Sean O'Hare, and I know comics.
Hi, I'm Spencer Vogel, and I know crypto.
Hi, I'm Kevin Lee Loader, and I don't know shit. This is the Comics and Crypto podcast.
Comics and crypto, crypto and comics, collector's world in a digital age. Comics and crypto, crypto and comics, it's where the next billionaires will be rich. Comics and crypto.
What is up, VEVE fam? Thanks again for joining us today. We are here with Ali from Elite Comics 11. What's up, Ali?
What's up, Sean? How you doing, man?
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited about today because this is a topic that I'm incredibly passionate about. And of course, the topic is comic speculation and why it's significant.
Yeah, no, speculation is a big part of the industry right now, and collectors are definitely familiar with speculation. What do we mean by speculation? Well, we mean basically picking up books that we think are going to increase in value before they do. So that's generally what we're talking about. There's what I consider different types of speculation. We'll get into Sean, but I don't want to guide things. You be the leader. Where do you want to go first?
I guess we can just dive right into the beginning. Why is speculation important for the comic book market and always help, or can it hurt comic books as well?
Well, there's good speculation and, maybe not so good speculation. There's speculation just generally. I think there's nothing wrong with speculation in terms of, people want to buy collectibles kind of at a price that's going to be less than what they're eventually going to be worth. So if you think, a book is going to be worth more later, of course you want to pick it up. Is that speculating? Yeah, it is. That is speculating. You're speculating it's going to increase in value. There's there's a little, speculation today. It's also, there's a negative context for it, that a lot of people think negatively of it, because there's a lot of instances of people picking up books thinking that, they see some news story somewhere online, so it has to be true, right? But then it's not true, or it's much more limited or different than people thought it was. And then, you see books go way up in price, and then, when the disappointment strikes, they come back way down, like in a really quick amount of time. So that's something that, I'm not a huge fan of that. I think that that's not super healthy for the market in general. It does happen, but speculation in general, in terms of people picking up things and having their holdings go up in value, that's definitely good for the industry, especially the sustained approach, where it's not just some cover or some article or tweet was put out somewhere, God knows where, and then you're going to freak out over it. Like, I would be aware of that kind of stuff, but you definitely want to pick up things that you think are going to go up in value over time.
Yeah, and that's such a great point. And it really comes down to, like, even just one tweet can affect the market. And especially when it starts a chain reaction of an emphasis on FOMO. People on VEVE see that all the time. You'll see a quick pump and then it'll just cool right back down and people buy it at the high. So, yeah. And that's just really understanding the market itself. So you definitely see it both on the digital and also the physical side.
Yeah, so, but it is a big deal, because it's a lot. We're talking about concepts that translate into a lot of money, like either gained or lost. So it is a huge topic.
Absolutely. So what are some good examples of a comic book that has gone up because of speculation?
Yeah, one example would be, let's take the Star Wars kind of, Star Wars TV series. People are actually trying to get the leaks about which characters are going to appear on which episodes, because when they do appear, it'll go, the value of their first appearances will go way up. And then depending on, for example, is the character, a prominent character? Do they survive more than one episode? How were they portrayed? all kinds of stuff. Like, once the cat's out of the bag and we're introduced to whatever the development was, like the price could go back down, it could stay steady, it might even go up a little bit further, like that kind of stuff. So that's one example. Like the Grand Inquisitor, for example, from like some of the the new Star Wars series. That was one example where there was a fluctuation. On a more vintage note, like that whenever there's an MCU, like we just had San Diego, and the next phase was sort of rolled out, at least the beginning of it. And so, there was a lot of excitement generated with like Daredevil 1, for example. Like we're going to get a ton of Daredevil. So you see a lot more activity on the transactional side with anything Daredevil related. So that stuff, there's more transactions, prices go up. So, just a lot of energy created from news, like news drops. That's what you're after. So that kind of creates the speculation.
Yeah, Kevin Feige confirmed 18 episodes for season 1. That's amazing. We're used to 6.
That's a lot.
But that's a lot. Yeah. And that weekend was so exciting, especially for me as well as a fan, first and foremost, but also as an investor, because there's a couple of comics, but quite a few comics that I've been investing in for the past couple of years. Because I've done a lot of my research into the speculation, but a lot of it was tied to Submariner #1. I bought a 9.6 a couple of years back because the rumors were very strong that the Submariner was going to be a character coming to the MCU. Because there was a photo that was released of a water tank at Tyler Perry's film lot. They were filming Wakanda Forever inside of a water tank. And I think it was pretty obvious to me, like after all the other evidence, rumors, this has to be. And I found an opportunity to buy in a 9.6 at a very low price. In my opinion, it was a safe floor with big upside. I already considered that book undervalued. I got it for about $1,500 to $2,000 at the time. It was a 9.6. And that book has doubled, if not tripled since then.
Yeah.
And that's how I look at it, right, guys? So like it's a safe floor with big upside. And that's important to me as an investor when I buy into speculation. Another example, back in 2020 of August, I was at Torpedo Comics, and there was a signing with Jim Shooter, Mike Zeck, and John Beatty. They are the creators of the Secret Wars comics. And I was talking to Jim Shooter, and he told me, he said, yeah, Marvel recently reached out to me, and they asked for a lot of materials on Secret Wars, and they only do that when they're going to make a movie. And I said, what, you think they're going to make a movie? He's like, yeah, in my opinion, it's a matter of when, not if. I'm like, okay. So I went home and bought probably about 4 or 5 issues of 9.8s of Secret Wars 1 and Secret Wars 8, which were some of the most significant keys of the Secret Wars series. And including, actually, I'm very proud of this, Ali, a 9.8 Canadian price variant newsstand. I think they're all probably newsstand, but yeah, it took me a long time to find that one. Actually, the guy was on eBay. I reached out to him. We met in person because he was in the Bay Area. So it was actually really cool. We actually stay connected. It's a really rad. But yeah, very proud of that speculation, man, because that again came to fruition all in the same weekend. And I got those comics for I think around 200 each as a 9.8. Well, not the newsstand Canadian price newsstand variant. That was a little bit more. But yeah,
they cost a little bit more now, Sean. So you did very well.
Did good. But that was, to me, I look at those comics and I think to myself, if the speculation doesn't come to fruition, I still believe that these comics were undervalued at the time. And that to me says, okay, Sean, safe floor with big upside. Yeah. So the speculation just only helps the value of these comics. But yeah, it worked out really well. And I was really proud of that.
Good on you, man. No, you were definitely ahead of the curve on that. And then, there's a lot of instances that come up on that. So like just kind of backing up. So speculation, it's usually driven by like the news story. You found some information. It's kind of like the same thing with anything. If something's going to be nowadays with like the pop culture and kind of the public psyche and excitement is driven by what we see in the media, right? So it's like with anything else in the media, whatever in other topics, like you need to know your source. You got to feel comfortable with your sources. There are pages out there that just put out all kinds of stuff, and it might not be verified. It might just be gossip. You got to, be wary of all that stuff. If it's just some guy making a show and telling you this and that and this, look at track records and just make sure that this is a source that you can actually rely on. And it's not just giving you something that isn't really vetted or reliable, because we're talking about people spending significant money trying to acquire things ahead of the curve. So, I just want to put that kind of disclaimer out there to just be wary.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great point. And that's something I try to do as well, is look at multiple credible sources. That's key. There are some really cool channels out there as well that I actually watch quite a bit, and they have really, really cool insight and perspective, specifically in the MCU. So feel free to reach out and we can definitely talk about that some more. But yeah, it's really a really cool opportunity to just enjoy and learn more about the space.
Yeah, and then, so my take on that is like that. I definitely have my share of like what I consider to be trusted news sources, and they might not always be first on reporting something, but like when they pick it up, I feel a lot more confident about it that it's actually happening. But just my own background, and this is going to be boring for some people, but whatever. I mean, I'm going to say this, like, I'm more, when it comes to speculation, I'm more interested in the legal and contractual kind of news. When I find out like a certain, there's an agreement made between, let's just say Sony and Disney to do XYZ, or this actor is under contract for however X number of movies, that kind of stuff. To me, that kind of news is something that can sustain some of this, like, more like a safer floor kind of speculation. Like once those deals have been made on like these really, like, for example, Disney acquiring Fox, okay, taking Fantastic Four and X-Men. Like, we know they're coming. We know that kind of money didn't change hands for nothing. Like, like I said, like the mouse didn't pay that much money to not use those properties. So you can safely just know that, like, Disney's going to try to do a really good job with those franchises because of the amount of money they paid for them. So that's something you can count on. It might not happen next month, but it is going to happen. Like, that stuff is coming. So, and now we know more, right?
And exactly. And to add to your point, they actually confirmed Fantastic Four 1, the date now, November of 2024.
Yeah.
Very exciting. Very exciting. So plenty of room for that comic to grow in the meantime, which is crazy, right? Because that is one of the most significant Grail comics, Fantastic Four 1, but it's also a spec book. And I've talked about that so many times and it blows my mind. Same with Fantastic Four 5, the first appearance of Dr. Doom. These are spec books still, and they're Grails, in my opinion, based on what we believe is Grail, but also, I mean, a lot of people believe they're Grails as well, but it's also a spec book, which is really exciting. We're really excited for their upside.
Yeah, no, I have a copy right here, actually. So Fantastic.
Woo!
This one is signed by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, but this is a great book. I mean, and then we have the AF-15 here, like, amazing. This is for Spider-Man. And so, currently, the AF-15, it's Spider-Man. It's the most successful, like, commercial character of all time. So, like, of course, there's a huge demand for this book. Now, if you talk about like old time collectors, people that were around when Fantastic Four came out, this obviously, regardless, is like a super big part of the Marvel history. But for the newer generation, they haven't been super happy with the iterations we've seen on the big screen. So that kind of has diminished demand a bit, or at least kept it at bay. If they do this right, I mean, there is still a lot of growth potential in this book, because you're going to have a new generation actually realizing who these characters are and getting excited about them. So that's going to translate into more demand, and that's across all the Fantastic Four titles. So it's one of the safer, investment moves, in my opinion, even though we're not giving investment advice.
Never. By the way, this is not no financial advice in this video. But yeah, to add to your point, that I'm so glad you brought that up, popularity and relevance. That's really what it comes down to, right? For the value of these comics, and also the future value. So like Spider-Man, much argument that he's the most popular character in the world right now. And a lot of people will probably buy into his AF-15 comic and probably never even read that specific comic, but they know Spider-Man. They love Spider-Man because largely because of the MCU or the movies they watch. And that's the crazy.
Where can you? You're bombarded with Spider-Man.
Everywhere, right? Yeah, exactly.
The PlayStation game, the movies, the cartoons. He's everywhere. He's
interpretations of Spider-Man. Yeah,
2-year-olds are playing the Spider-Man game on their parents' iPhone.
Exactly. Yeah,
everywhere.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's the crazy part about the Fantastic Four is that he's not really well known. They're not really truly well known outside the comic book community because they haven't been relevant in film yet.
Right.
Because the films that were released, as you mentioned, they're mediocre at best. Now that it's in Kevin Feige's hands and the MCU team or the Marvel team, a lot of potential there. A lot of potential.
Yep.
So when you buy into specific comics for speculation, do you focus on FA comics for characters? Are there any specific type of comics that you focus on? Or let's say a big actor gets signed by, gets locked into a certain character. Do you go after that FA comic or the most significant FA comic, or what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think there's different ways to do this, and people are successful in basically growing some equity in different ways. Me personally, if that's what we're talking about, is I tend to stick to the first appearances. So by FA, you mean first appearances. And that's because, again, I take this boring kind of approach where it's I want the fundamental stuff that might not go nuts in terms of percentage. Maybe it's only going to go up 20 or 30% instead of 200%, but then lose all of its gain a month down the road. That's why I stick to first appearances, because not a flash in the pan. These books have their own pedigree, their own importance. So even if I'm not 100% right, it's still a good book to pick up because it's the first appearance of some character that's not going anywhere. And if it's not today, it's tomorrow, I'll be happy with that. That's my belief anyways, but you can never be certain. But, the other end of that is people are I can't pick up the first appearance of this character, so I'm going to pick up the 4th or the 6th or the 7th. Obviously, those books might be, really low value, and they could double, triple in price over some news just because they're so cheap. So some people take that approach. Other people, they'll be hey, Submariner's coming, so I'm going to go pick up every single cover that has Submariner, cool Submariner covers. Me personally, I'm really hesitant to do that. If you're buying a book just because of its cover, it's like that old adage, don't judge a book by its cover. Well, there's some truth to that. If it's just the cover, just be wary, guys. Stick to the fundamentals, first appearances. I know they get pricey. If you can't do that, then just pick up, if you're doing what we're talking about, try to stick to the keys, just because you get a certain amount of safety on the floor, which I really like. Even if the speculation doesn't turn out exactly like you thought, you're still in a relatively good place compared to some of the other options.
Have you seen an increase in value of second appearance issues? I've heard a lot of this is tied to speculation, but I've talked to a lot of people within the comic book community that believe that second appearance comics are going to become more and more significant over time. And like you mentioned, it definitely makes a lot of sense, especially if FA comics are way out of price range, right? So then it makes sense that the second appearance comics will start to increase in value for that reason.
Yeah, didn't we just have a record-breaking sale of a Superman #1? It's not his first appearance, right? That I don't know. I don't think it's his second appearance either. I'm not completely sure on that, but the concept's the same. It's when these first appearances get to a certain financial level, they're just not attainable for a lot of people, which is totally understandable. So, you pivot. No, I can't get that. So what do I get? The second appearance? Or, for example, one of my beloved books, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1. Well, the first print was so scarce when it came out. Scarce meaning how many people are Turtles fans? And the original print run was only 3,000, and not everybody took care of their copy. So it's pretty low compared to how popular Turtles are. But then the price of the first print just went crazy high. So yeah, everyone wants a first print, but at some point people were well, I'm not going to be able to get a first print, so let me get a second print or a third print, which aren't as scarce. But people make that pivot a lot of times when these books just become out of their reach. So
one of my biggest mistakes, I could have got 2 or 3 years ago, I had an opportunity to get a second issue of TMNT, a 9.8 for $800 or $750 or something like that. And I was like, nah, it's okay. I'll get something else. Whoops.
well, there's the examples of that for sure. So yeah, to answer your question, second appearances, depending on the character and scarcity of like the first and second appearance, we've definitely seen examples of when they go up. Like the one that's sticking with me right now, I don't think it's been crazy, but compared to how much the book used to be worth, I think it's pretty significant. Like the second appearance of Iron Man, for example. A lot of people can't afford TOS 39, so they find the second appearance. And there's different examples like that. And there's also a second appearance of a book of a character, you know, a little known character named Wolverine. Like his second appearance is in Giant Size X-Men 1, right? And he's on the cover, and that's iconic. But that book itself, it's a little, you know, that has a ton of first appearances in it also. So that's a good book as well, but for multiple reasons.
Yeah. And even aside from the older, like Silver Age comics or even Bronze Age, a lot of the modern age comics, there's some really, really, really good value as well because of it's tied to the future of the MCU. Like, for example, Young Avengers #1, it has multiple FAs. It's been called like the modern day Giant Size X-Men 1 because of it's tied to, you know, the future generation of characters. Ultimate Fallout #4, First Appearance of Miles Morales. I remember when that book was a couple of years ago, it was hovering around $400 as 9.8, and then there was a video game announcement and it pushed it to around 1,000. And now we're sitting around, you know, $2,000 to $3,000 floor as a 9.8. It's hovering in between there. It's pretty remarkable because there are a ton of issues. It's not a scarce comic at all, but that's a perfect example of popularity over scarcity. And in my opinion, that comic probably has a lot of room to grow because Miles Morales has barely begun his character in media, pop culture media. So very excited for the future of that character.
You know, Miles is a great character, not going anywhere. Definitely gonna, I mean, how is he not gonna be a big part of the future? So that's a good book. And yeah, like you said, it went way up, and there is a lot of copies out there, but there's a ton of demand. So yeah, we've talked about this before, but I think sometimes people get too focused on how many of something there are out there, and they don't properly factor in demand. I mean, if the whole world wants a copy and there's only 20,000 copies, it's still gonna go up in value. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And this is kind of like, this dives a little bit deeper into the importance of understanding that concept of blue ocean, red ocean, right? So buying in to an investment when the prices are low, and then you sell when the prices are high, or just hold, you know. I have a hard time selling things, so that's kind of me, but I love buying in low. That's when the oceans are calm and there's no fighting in the water. And that's when you want to dive into an investment. When you start seeing things like skyrocket in price, might be good to pump the brakes.
Even the books you just mentioned, like even the blue chip kind of new age books like Ultimate Fallout 4, Young Avengers, like I think everything you just said is all true. Like I think that's all right. But even right now, like the books have been worth more than they are as we're recording this right now. Like they've come down some with everything going on in, like, you know, the broader economy and the marketplace. So, you know, just be aware of that also, that, like, you know, just the whatever we say is hot, like it might have, you know, it's seen better days even currently. So it might be a little late on that, but who knows? Or it could double again. Like, just be skeptical. No one knows for sure. But if we're mentioning these examples, like, I don't, just be wary. You might not be super early on them. You might want to be looking for the next thing instead. So
that's a very good point. That's a very good point. And that's keeping your eye out to what's coming out in comic book stores. Specifically, if you hear about a new character coming out and it's really exciting and you think there's strong potential you can see this character in the MCU, maybe you've heard rumors from valid resources. There could be an interesting opportunity to buy multiple, because it's cool at comic book stores. You can buy, pre-orders, you can buy multiples, and sometimes you can get variants for free, because if you buy a certain amount of cover A's, then you get variants. I've done this with the House of Slaughter. I bought 1,000 issues of the cover A. I didn't realize there's going to be 500,000 printed. That's another thing you got to think about too. If it's a really popular comic, there might be a lot printed. Probably going to take a while to see an ROI on that one, but but the cool thing was I was able to get a ton of all of the variants for free, including the 1001 variant and the 501 variant. As far as new investors that are coming to this space, one piece of advice that you give them as far as when it comes to speculation?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've covered a lot of that. Like you should, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of noise out there. You really need to, just because, a source is well followed or a lot of people watch a show or something, that doesn't mean that like you can, rely on the information there. Like you need it's a very nuanced world where you're trying to get reliable information. It's just like anything else right now. Like there's so many sources. It doesn't take much to start a talk show and have some people watch you. So, just do your research, your own research, cross-check things before you make financial, moves based on that, spending your money. I don't want people to get burned. So just be wary. Also realize things don't go up forever. Okay. Things go up. Then they'll, kind of stall. Maybe they'll go back up. Maybe they'll go down, but it's not just, things don't just keep going up at the same rate forever. So be aware of that. But make this is at least, Elite Comics 11, we pride ourselves on just hosting a community. There's really good people out there that are happy to talk through things with you, especially if you're new. Kind of just become part of the community, make connections, talk through these same issues that other people in the community are kind of trying to figure out themselves. And they'll help you out on sharing their own experiences, good and bad. So, if you can learn from someone else's negative experience, maybe that will help you avoid what they went through, kind of thing. Because there's a lot of pitfalls out there. And it's everything from, fake sourcing, fake, thinking gossip is for sure going to happen when it's not, to also just buying from places that, they say a book is a certain condition or one thing, and then it actually isn't it's another thing. And then they don't back the transaction. So you just got to be careful out there. My advice would be, learn, do your research and don't be in a rush. That's what my advice would be. This isn't going anywhere. It doesn't hurt to watch a few examples and just kind of monitor how they play out before you make your own decision. There's no need to jump into this in a rush. That would be my advice.
That's amazing. And to your point, I mean, the fear of missing out is a powerful impulse, for people. So really try to just take a step back and reassess. Keep asking yourself questions is this a smart investment? Why? It's really important that you really understand what it is you're buying into before you buy into it. Don't buy into it and just because of you're seeing the market just go increase in value overnight. That's not typically I've found that's not always the safest play.
Yeah, and I mean, I would also say that if you're brand new and you're trying to figure this stuff out, just be responsible in terms of, there's a lot of forces at work. You're not going to understand all of them when you're first starting out. So if you're going to make, a move in terms of trying to speculate on a book, get ahead of it before you think it's going to go up in value. Just make sure it's an amount of money that, you can live with. If it doesn't work out, I just want to stress that just because I don't want to see anyone getting burned off this stuff. So
I'm so happy you said that. Always work within your budget, not outside of your means. It's super important, very important. And, for me, again, to reemphasize, I always try to look for the safe floors, the safest as possible with biggest upside.
Yeah.
It's always a great move. And to better understand that is you have to do your research into the characters, into the comics to have a better understanding of what it is you're buying into and compare it to the rest of the market.
Yeah. And I feel like we talked about exactly. If you can find a speculation book that has the first appearances in it, or it has the pedigree of just being a book that is coveted already, but you think something's going to happen to push it to another level, you're going to have a nice floor built in there. It's not going to go to zero, right? It's always going to be a really coveted book anyway. So that, to me, that's the safe play. it might not be the most, it doesn't have the most upside necessarily, but those are the kind of plays that I personally make, like myself. So that's, I want to practice what I preach.
I love it. Yeah, same here. Ollie, thanks so much for coming on today. Everyone, make sure to give Elite Comics 11 a follow on Twitter and Instagram. We'll include their links in the details below. And I can't wait for the next one.
Yeah, this was fun. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it as always.